Evening, Darren.
Evening, Jackie. How are you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very well, thank you.
thanks
Lovely
for
to
having me
see you
on
again.
again. And you.
Honestly, so interesting. People are loving the talks you do because the information that you share is just so. So when I asked you if you do the next one, because when we left off on the last one, so anyone that's not seen this before, we've done two talks before, and they were both very, very in depth and about words, meanings, how they've been, what's the word? Well, what meanings they could have, not the meanings we think they've got.
Yes.
Um, yeah. But anyway, so Darren's looked into all that. He also runs men's groups. Always fascinating, fascinating. But he's actually going to do a ladies group next year sometime, which I think there'll be a lot of interest for. But tonight, when I said about doing, did you want to do a talk on logos and symbols? You said, well, I'm really quite interested to talk about the Masonic symbol. And I know very little about it, but I do recognize it, obviously. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I'd love you to talk about that.
Okay. So this is one of my favorite subjects, and I do you when you asked me to talk about symbols in general, and you showed me that chart with all these symbols, and I thought, oh yeah, they're interesting, but to me they're like a mild curiosity compared to what we're going to look at tonight. So I hope by the end of it that the viewers will agree with it as well, and it'll be a pleasure to share this with you because that symbol contains the meaning that gets ascribed to it in every Masonic circle I've come to isn't the meaning that I've discovered for it. And I didn't discover it all in one go. It was progressive over many years, and it really is quite a powerful I don't want to say esoteric, but it is a hidden map, really. And within it, it ties in with something we were talking about before with the collared and cuffed men, and how it is only the men that are collared and cuffed. And this is really related to this symbol. And within it is actually a deep pathway to a type of mental healing and empowerment that is really surprising, that includes within it one of the sort of real fundamental keys to understanding gender and some of the reasons we have problems in some of our relationships and within ourselves. There's so much in this that it's going to be a pleasure to try and get through that in the next hour with you. I bet you didn't expect it to cover that terrain though, but that's where we're going to go tonight.
Well, I love that, yeah, because obviously we've all heard of the Masons, and that's the
Yeah.
Masonic symbol. So, are you going
Yes.
to talk a bit about the Masons first?
So the Masons themselves, the membership books were published in 1717, and that's when the Masons as we know it came about. But if you look into the history of Masonry before then, it was very secretive, and actually it wasn't really known who was a member or not. And some say the sort of real Masons went underground at that time, and what we have today with the rituals and various things is kind of a superficial almost cover for real masonry. But nowhere in any of the research I've done is there anything that shows what I'm about to share with you all tonight. And it is so before when we were looking at language and both the powerful effects that it can have, both to guide out new vistas and new possibilities, but as well to kind of limit us and cripple us really quite powerfully and profoundly. These all operate at a certain level of mind that is quite disconnected from our embodiment. This is why we talk about things. We spoke about that before, where people will talk about how they feel rather than really learning to really speak from and with it. And this is why sometimes their spells aren't as effective. But that we weren't born like that. We were born sort of integral and embodied with our expression. It's something we learned as we sort of started to disconnect uh, what we showed others from the felt reality within ourselves. And the Toltecs, who are my teachers that I've spoken of before, they spoke of a time when You know, have you heard of Wetico? So
No.
some Native Americans speak of Wetico. They speak of it as a bit like a mind virus that affected humans long ago, and it kind of the Toltecs view it as a sort of like a parasite of some kind. And I don't mean that really necessarily in a physical sense, but it's really interesting in that if you look at how a parasite behaves, the number one property it has is it tricks the host into believing that it is the host. So like mistletoe is a parasite. And the reason a tree feeds the mistletoe is that it thinks it's a branch. So because it thinks it's a branch, it almost like identifies with the mistletoe in a way. And when in Carlos Castaneda's books, when he asked his teacher, you know, okay, what did this thing do to humanity? And his answer was, they gave mankind their mind. They gave mankind their mind. And if we think about it, this is where we get language like visiting nature, or viewing ideas like viewing the earth as dirty. You know, so who is it that views the earth as dirty? Who is it that really is a visitor when we talk about visiting nature? Because we're all born native, we're all born indigenous. A kind of disembodiment kicks in later on in our sort of way, and that creates our sense of not fitting, and sense it almost hijacks us, tricking us into believing we are visitors when actually we're not. And if we look at the behavior of parasites, there's some really sophisticated parasites. I invite people to go and look at it because we are tricked by stature. We only look for threats and things which are big. We kind of ignore things which are small. And yet, if we look at how laid low we can be by bugs and various things like that, these are very small. And yet we can be really crippled by them and really laid low. And for some reason, we only think that they can affect us biologically. We don't think about potential emotional and mental effects that could be affecting us as these things are perhaps living within us. And this is just physical parasites. There's some really fascinating ones out there, like the bovine liver fluke. Everybody, I invite you to go and look at the bovine liver fluke. And this is an incredible parasite that goes through 2 species to get to its target. And what it does is it exerts selective mind control over ants, which is really fascinating to watch, where the ants are allowed to sort of behave normally by themselves. But then when there's a cow around, they're like overwhelmed and they're compelled to climb up this blade of grass. So they're at risk of being eaten by a cow because that's where the parasite wants to be. But it's selective and it's phenomenal. The rest of the time, the ant is allowed to go about its business. And in a way, it's kind of, if we look at some of the hungers and desires that drive humans, that lead them to suffering, it's like, well, whose hunger are you feeding? And if we look at the behavior of parasites, what they do is they have their needs met at the cost of the host, so that the host is in a reduced state of well-being. And of course, parasites don't really know how to take care of the environment and the home of the host, and so end up accidentally damaging it. And these are hallmark things of parasites at all sort of levels of life, and yet we don't think about it in affecting us in that way, although the notion of the Wetico does. So the Native Americans have this as well. So both the Toltec lineage and the Native American lineage allude to this sort of thing. There's these like hidden ancient whispers of something affecting us. And a few years ago, it really came to me that this is actually what we're talking about when we talk about the idea of colonization. I don't know if we spoke about this before, but if we look at, so if we talk about places being colonized, there's this huge thing. This is really actually a pathway for healing white shame as well in Europe. It's a big thing for me because the white Europeans are viewed as the colonizers, but they actually weren't. And this is related to the Masonic symbol. We'll get there in a bit. But they actually weren't the colonizers. They were just the first who were colonized. And they were colonized more brutally than the later countries like North America and Australia, because in Europe, no land was left for the people to live on in the old ways. The stories got wiped out completely, the songs eradicated, whereas the Native Americans still have their songs, they still have some land to live on, even though it's not great. Similarly for the Aborigines.
That in at all, because I don't know any of this.
Yeah, so really what happened is, but then we have to look at what we mean by the colony, really, because people think of it as just, you know, imposing a way of life, and it is. But if we look at colony in a different way, if we looked at it as bacteria in a petri dish, another word for a colony of bacteria would be a culture. And if we look at what we look at with colonization, it's like the imposition of a culture. And it's like, well, okay, what defines a culture? Well, it's values, core beliefs, it's direction, objectives, what the very beliefs about what is a human being and what should I be doing to feel like I'm a good and contributory human being? What are our cultural ideas about our relationships with each other and with our environment? These are hallmarks of cultural differences, really. And I think what we're seeing, and if we look at what the effect of the colony has been, it's been the imposition of a set of values and direction and beliefs that actually lead us to a reduced state of well-being. And they have us in a state which is makes us sick and hate ourselves and be addicted. And, you know, there are very few
I
who
know where you're
succeed
going now.
living the ways of the colony,
Yeah.
and because it's an imposition on the native peoples of Europe. And what I think we're seeing is actually, I actually believe that the whole alternative scene is actually something quite special and different. So alternative medicine is really a return to more native medicine.
Yes.
Alternative gardening is just a return to more native gardening, and all the alternative lifestyles, alternative sounding and movement, all of these I see are actually a natural sort of healing of the sort of impositions of the colony. I actually see it as like a natural decolonization of the European natives. You know, it's not alternative at all. It's actually a natural healing process. It's people questing to find their place in the world again, you know, and their place in their environment and with each other. I see it's a beautiful and very, very special thing.
Mm.
But so I see it as a healing of the parasite and integration, so that what we're going through is a new emergent culture. So what's happening in the so-called alternative scene in the awakened movement is a different set of values, it's a different set of beliefs about our relationship to each other and the world around us. And this is kind of what's bubbling up in different places. And what I want to share with you tonight is really one of the pathways for the mind to heal itself in a way. So before, when we were talking about you know, spells and all the rest of it, that's a huge thing. It's a huge part of the story, but we have an integral mind, and there's pathways to the integral mind, to the native mind in what we say. It's like a combination lock that can help the mind reintegrate and sort of build its own pathways back into embodied experience. And we might have noticed that with some of the spells we used before. And then we started to look at the effect of characters, because we spoke about them a bit, didn't we? We spoke about the ah and how much it shares when we share like the ah of pain or the ah of pleasure, sorry, the ooh of pleasure, how much that conveys, because they're always embodied. So we're going to get a little bit more into that sort of level tonight, what I call character development. We're going to be looking at some very, very special characters tonight and special shapes that are really at the root of our minds. So, well, I was going to try and use my phone camera to make this easier, because I'm not at home, so I don't have my whiteboard. So I'm going to be just holding up bits of paper here. I need to get rid of this this pop-up thing. There we go.
Just
So
say,
hopefully this.
now, when you started off, you said about the mistletoe. Does the mistletoe kill the tree?
No,
Oh,
no, it just uses some of its resource. That's all.
Okay, because I went to a talk on Monday about natural essences, and she talked about the mistletoe essence, you know, and when it fell off the tree, she was able to take the branch home. And so it
Yes.
just made me think, did it kill the tree? Would it have killed the tree if it had stayed on there?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, sometimes you'll see many trees with lots of mistletoe on it. I'll tell you what, though, I did think there was something sinister for a while about how we kiss under mistletoe, and it's
Mm.
almost like you're kissing under a parasite. Is it like, and that's how they spread? What we doing? You know, but I'm not trying to cast shadows on
No.
that. Um, so anyway, right, onwards. So just going to start off with this a very simple shape here, right? And it's just to say, I'm just going to hold this up. Can you see that? Is that gone blurry or is it clear? This could take a while
At the
tonight.
minute, there
I'm
will
going
be
to do it that way. That's clear anyway. It's a circle. You can make out that
just a
that is a,
circle, yes.
yeah. But okay. But what else could it be? What else could that be?
Moon, the sun.
That's exactly it. A hole, a hat, a ball, all sorts of things. And yet, if I then just going to do another, just give me a second here. Let's hope this is going to work here. Give me a second. Okay. It did focus earlier. I might have to take the blur off. I'm at my mother's here tonight. Let's see. If I take the blur off, that should.
We'll see it if you take. Oh, that's perfect. Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's
Okay.
much better.
So I've got 0, 1, 2, square, circle, triangle, and the word orb.
Yes.
Now, how your mind thinks about shapes compared to how it thinks about letters, compared to how it thinks about numbers is completely different. But we're working with the same shapes a lot of the time. And that's crazy. It's only through the relationship we know what they are. And they have a very powerful effect depending on which part of the mind they're using. And this is a really deep part of mind. This is where, if you think about language as being like an application of mind, this is like the machine code as we're getting down into the shape level. So all of our words are really made up of shapes that we combine with sounds. But if you think about the journeys you can go on reading a book, just from the shapes that are in there, it's quite a mysterious effect, very, very powerful. You can't unsee it, you know, you can't unread something if it's right in front of you. And our doorway, we're going to get to the Masonic shape here because we have to approach it in a different way. We have to go through your mind in a particular pathway here. So one of the disconnections in our minds. So the thing about these shapes is that, you know, we use words and numbers and geometry to express all of our understanding. We use them to express our inmost thoughts and needs and aspirations. They're really significant, and it's quite important to kind of understand them a bit more if we can, because they have such an effect on us. And one of the kind of traps or not traps, one of the sort of lock points in the mind as we were given it, part of the disconnections that's built in, is if we were taught that these were basic shapes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Triangles, circles, squares.
Yeah.
So if you're taught that these were basic shapes, then you've kind of got this disconnection built in, and we'll get to what I mean by that in a minute. So what do I mean by a basic shape, first of all? Well, if you think about the primary colors, what that means is they can't be broken down to another color. You know, they can't be reduced to another color. You can't get another color out of them. So if I was to say to you, that's what a basic shape is, it cannot be reduced to another shape. That's only true for one of these. Which one is that true for?
Or is it the triangle?
Nope, it's not the triangle.
Oh,
Nope, it's all
the
right. There's
circle, I
always
suppose.
a circle. That's right, it's a circle, but it's all right. There's always someone that says triangle. I love it. I love it.
I thought you were
But
going to do that because that was the shape of the Masonic thing.
no, no, no. So it's the circle. Now the other two can be reduced to another shape. What shape is that? They're all made up of the same other shape.
Oh,
They're
you
made up
don't.
of straight lines.
Oh, okay, thank you.
They're made up of straight lines. Now, what we have is really the line and the circle are two basic shapes. And actually, the line makes up all the other shapes that you're taught. Pentagons, hexagons, dodecahedrons, all the rest of it. The line makes them all up.
Yes.
They're all made up of this. And we get told this crazy notion that there are no straight lines in nature, which is complete nonsense because there's amazing. I invite anyone to go and look up Fingal's Cave. So Fingal's Cave is a beautiful example of what they call columnar basalt, and it holds up some of the Scottish hills. And this cave is a beautiful place of the ancients, and it's all pentagons and hexagons, linear rock lines everywhere there. There are lines throughout nature, just as there are circles throughout nature. You know, lines and circles are how nature builds. And they operate in a very special part of our mind because they are true basic shapes. Nature builds in them. They can become anything in our mind. It's phenomenal the role the line and the circle play because they can become numbers, letters, and many other things. And it's the age-old symbols of the male and the female, of the penis and the vagina. These shapes turn up on cave drawings going all the way back. They are in every single language. They're all over the place. They are fundamental in nature. And in fact, all of our technology is built on the line and the circle. So binary is just a line and a circle. You know, it's really phenomenal. And all numbers. So you have a circle, a line, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, line, circle. There's no other numbers. The line and the circle bound all number. They are all over the place. And actually, you know, before when we spoke about gender a little bit and we spoke about it being electromagnetic, it's a funny thing that when the line and the circle meet, we use that symbol on our electrical devices. And we have it as this, the line penetrating the circle. And what do we call that? We call it power. And
Do
the
ask.
power, it's the power symbol. So the
Oh,
power symbol is
yes,
the
it's
line penetrating the
like when
circle.
you go
Yeah.
to turn off.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's on
Oh,
all of them. And it's because these shapes are actually they're universal in our awareness. They turn up all over the place. Even what's the number of the house that rules this country? It's number 10, isn't it?
yeah.
But do you know that when they bought that street to use it for the government buildings, that wasn't number 10, that was number 5. They changed the numbers, and it's actually a line in a circle. And you've got even the most ancient blind Hawaiian deity is supposedly the blind god Io. And it's like it's not Io, it's line and circle. And it's interesting because the line and the circle is operating at the shape level of mind first, which is plugged in a way that um, touches us in unusual ways where I can do if I do things like earlier when we looked at the circle, and it could be any number of things. And actually the same applies to the line, and we're going to look at a bit like that tonight, because the line is the one that you weren't taught was a shape. It's the one that's obfuscated, and it's the one that represents the masculine. And last time we were talking about how it's only the men that are collared and cuffed. And I spoke a little bit about how this is about the collared masculine. So tonight we're going to get to the bottom of that, and its roots lie in this, or a pathway to it lies in this Masonic symbol. But it's also much more than a revelation of sort of like hidden masculine mysteries, but also it is this pathway to a more indigenous integral mind, as we'll get a little hints of that as we go. Now, when the male and the female energy, when the line energy and the circle energy are in balance, then you get the third basic shape and the third natural shape. And the third natural shape turns up everywhere in nature. It is in shells, plants, it's in water, it's in air. Do you know what it is?
Spiral come to mind, but
It's
it's
the
not.
spiral. You're
Is
absolutely
it?
right. It's the spiral. The spiral is the line that arcs, or the circle that can't complete itself. And that is the spiral of life, is the balance of the masculine and the feminine, which is everywhere in nature. except in our species, where the men are collared and cuffed, and we don't get taught about the basic shapes, and there's loads of other stuff going on. So our three basic shapes are the line, the circle, and the spiral. And of course, what shape is our galaxy? It's a spiral galaxy. So fair enough, if you're somewhere else, other energetics might be significant, but for us in a spiral galaxy with spiral air patterns, water patterns, shells, spirals everywhere, they're significant to us here, whether you like it or not. They are everywhere, and they are a result of this balance, which is quite a beautiful thing. So there's lots we could say about the spiral energy. There's loads of people that study spiral dynamics and all the rest of it. And there's the rule of three really sort of comes in with these three basic shapes working together. It's like these are the three ways that we communicate. You've got people who either get straight to the point, they beat around the bush, or this is like storytelling where you start off in a different direction to get somewhere. So that's what I've done tonight. So I've said, hey, we're going to talk about the Masonic symbol, and then I've drawn triangles and circles and squares, you know. So I've started off and so I'm spiraling round to get to the point. And all of these are really the expression of the ultimate fractal, which is the point. You know, they're all the moving point of life that are really built in. And if we look at it, and interestingly, in life, the real circle in nature isn't just a circle like that. It's actually, I'll just do it on this one.
Talking about sacred geometry, really, are you?
It is. This is absolutely sacred geometry. But this is about the relationship between sacred geometry and our speech and our expression, and there's a bridge between the two that is profound in its ability to convey meaning and feeling and connection in ways that when we talk about, we miss. You know, when we're just talking about stuff, rattling stuff off at whatever speed, then wondering why we're not getting the connection that we really need and that we're yearning for. It's like, well, it's because we're not embodying from that sort of native embodied state that we were born in. And it's just to do with, it's a bit like a Rubik's Cube, the way that we've been taught the alphabet and the shapes. And it's that the colors are all disjointed, so they don't quite fit with the rest of our experience. So whenever we go to spiritual things, people say, oh, leave your mind outside, or we switch the mind off. And it's like, well, that's all well and good, but it's just there doing its thing whenever I stop doing this other thing. Well, this is a way to really, truly change its shape, work with the shape of it, to understand it's the shape of the mind that's the problem. These are really just, and how we've used these building blocks, and it can be undone. And so the patterns that I'm sharing here tonight are patterns that are there for anyone to see. I'm not making any of it up. I'm just showing where we're using the same patterns in lots of different places that are actually linked. There's a pattern within it all, and that's what I've been sharing a little bit of in some of the previous sessions.
It's all necessary, really, I think, leading up to what you are actually talking about tonight.
It's
It's a
really
background.
and
Yeah.
we are already talking about it.
Yes.
This is the actual shape that we see in nature, and it's a circle with a circle in the middle. And that's what you see when you cut trees, planets, atoms, and we use this sort of bisecting thing everywhere. So what is the difference between, sorry, I'm not going to ask you to answer. I'm just going to give it a pause and then I'll answer. Don't feel any pressure. Okay. What is the difference between this shape and this shape, which is the two that you weren't really taught were important shapes? You were only taught the linear shapes, you know? But what's the difference between these two shapes and every other shape that you were taught? So pentagons, dodecahedrons, hexagons. What's different about the line and the spiral from everything else, all the others?
I'm not answering because you said don't.
Okay, but if you've got an answer, you're welcome to offer it. The difference is these two have no real ending in a way. It's like well, it's not they have no ending. These two will always take you somewhere different from where you started. The others will always take you back to where you started.
Got you.
Every single shape you were taught takes you back to where you started. These two, the ones with the male energy in it, will always take you somewhere different from where you started. These are the
Interesting.
shapes of change, and all of the others are shapes of states and forms. These are almost formless. They're the ones of change, and the other ones are all forms and states. And it's really interesting for those that would seek to maintain a state over us, that they use forms, paper forms and uniforms. So when we start to talk in terms of the basic shapes, if I'm talking about forms in one sense and states, I can immediately be talking about other types of state, and it fits without you having to think twice about it because of how these operate in our mind. Same as if I talk about drawing a line. And drawing a line is more than just drawing a line on page. If we talk about drawing a line through something, it's about, we all know it's about drawing a boundary. Say we draw a line through that. And these figures of speech are about us knowing about how these patterns and energies actually move. And the line energy is all about boundaries. Now, if I was to ask you, what is the tool that draws this shape better than any other? It's a ruler.
Ruler.
It's the shape of the ruler.
Mhm.
Now, on a ruler, first of all, what position does a ruler have in a state? It's the one that's in charge.
Yeah.
And remember from our talk about gender before, the charge is the electrical masculine in all of us. So on a ruler, there are different numbers. What are they for?
Measurement.
Measurement. Okay. Now in maths, those numbers could be centimeters, millimeters, inches, whatever. The overall term for all of them as a group is values. So the ruler measures values and decides where to draw lines. Now, what's happened for us is we live in a culture of the broken ruler, where you don't get taught about this, and people don't know how to measure the value of what they find inside themselves. They don't know how to measure the value of the things that are being offered around them. We have a broken ruler situation where people are not in charge of their own state. And it's all to do with the energy of being able to draw lines and make points, which is what this is about. And again, those that would seek to have a state over you can't have you wielding this energy of change, because then it's really difficult. You know, then you need to actually please people. It's way easier if you can collar this change in people and actually make them believe that it's worthless, so they won't bother lifting a finger, because they don't believe in the value of their change, which is this energy here. And in a way, if I pick up this glass and take a drink, and then I put it down here, the world has changed. The world has changed. Glasses don't move themselves. And if I get up away and leave this, that's going to stay there until somebody else does something about it. The power of your change is phenomenal. And for those that would seek to not have you wield it, their best tool is to make you believe that it has no value, and to not teach you about this energy here, your ability to take charge. Now, here's a really interesting thing. If I was to say this was a number, what number is it?
One.
One. Okay. Spiritually, what's everybody meant to be?
Actually, what?
Spiritually, what's everybody meant to be? We're all meant to be one, aren't we?
We're all one. Yes.
One.
Yes.
So this is the masculine one. What letter is it?
I.
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 I is the one, the product of the ruler. And that is the truth within every one. And it's about, this is the shape of sovereignty. Now, yeah, it's an enormous, enormous thing because all change comes from I. So we're sitting here in any situation until I get bored and want to walk away, until I need the toilet, until I need to get cold and decide I want a jumper on. And I've been in activism groups and stuff and movements over the years where everybody's like, yeah, we the people, critical mass, we the people, like 5,000 people there. And they'll use a line of police to contain thousands, millions of people. All you need is one line to contain that we, because the feminine one is about we, the collective. The masculine one is about I, the individual, and they're equal. And we're taught to denigrate this one. But anyway, we the people, critical mass situations. You got a line of police holding them in. It's like, all we need is 5,000 more people, and then we'll get what we want, sort of thing. 5,000 people more turn up. Nothing happens until someone takes a step, and then another someone takes a step. But it's always an someone has to do it first, and then others do it. And it looks like a we, but really it's a bunch of ones. It's a bunch of individuals doing it, you know?
Oh my gosh.
So,
Can I just tell you a quick story?
of course, go ahead. Yes, please do.
So Vader Austin, Dr. Emoto did all the water. You know about Dr. Emoto? And
Yeah,
Vader Austin's doing the water experiments now. And she asked the petri dish, she put a tiny bit of water in the petri dish. She didn't stand it on anything. She literally just asked it a question.
yeah.
I think it was, what's our purpose? What's the meaning of, what is my meaning in life? Froze it for 8 minutes, took it out, and it said, I am. In the freezing of it, it answered, the water has that much intelligence, it answered with I am.
Yeah. In
I can't
everything.
remember exactly how she worded the question, but that's what it meant. What's my purpose in life?
Yes, yes. So this is do you remember this shape?
Yes.
Where do you see it when you look at somebody?
I,
If you were looking in the eye.
yeah,
So it's so funny that the relationship, even though it's the sound of this, the shape of this, but what color is this in all of us? The
black.
pupil. It's black. And what do we call it? We call it the pupil.
Pupil, the pupil.
Yes, it's the pupil. It's the pupil of the one. Peering back, the black hole with a W at the center of the universe, peering back through all of us, through every pupil. That's our sovereign equality. These are the sort of like the shapes, the ruler, and then its partner, this one. And what's the shape that draws a circle? Sorry, not the shape. What's the tool that draws a circle better than any other?
Compass.
A compass. And what does a compass measure as well? There's another type of compass. What does it measure? If I use a compass, a different type of compass, not the one that draws a circle, there's two types of compass. So there's another type of compass that I use for doing what?
Measurement.
It
Is it?
measures, though. Yeah, you're right, though. It's for navigating.
Honestly, Darren, I didn't know I was taking a test tonight.
You're not taking a test. You're not being tested, mate. Honestly,
No, honestly, I'm loving this. I'm
not a
loving
test.
it,
It's not a
really.
test. So
I
the other
just
type
don't
of
want to get it
compass.
wrong.
No, there's no getting it wrong. It's a navigational compass, and we use it for measuring magnetism. So if you remember before, when we were talking about gender, and we were talking about how the feminine is the magnetic and the masculine is the electrical. The one who helps us take charge of our state is the electrical line. And this is the magnetic, the compass within us that we use for finding our way, for feeling our way. Now, I love in our language that prefixes and suffixes have a standard meaning, and the suffix ion is standard. So restoration is to restore, construction is to construct, and compassion is to compass. So by the same rule, compassion is the compass. So you have the ruler and the compass are actually about understanding gender. And in a way, they are actually about how we navigate in the world, regardless of belief, because it's about almost like the energy, the gender energy of the left foot, right foot of the ruler and compass, the one that we feel our way and we do something, and then we measure how that feels and we decide. We're meant to decide, am I going to have more of that, or do I need to draw a line here? And so many people are learning about the value of boundaries, and that's where we have to draw lines, very clearly. And that line drawing energy is how we define our state, how we cultivate our I and assert our internal ruler, and that is sovereignty in its essence. And if you now flick to the Masonic shape for us, have you got this? Have you got it there?
Yeah, let's get that up.
Yeah.
I'll just open the actual the one you said about. I'll just go back to share screen now.
So what happens for all of us really is with a healthy ruler, with a healthy eye, we measure and stand up for our values, which is based on how we feel. And that's this, to me, the whole of life is this navigation of the ruler and the compass, feeling our way. And when they're in balance, we are in our own spiral dynamics of feeling our way and asserting our values with clear points and lines as we go. And that's that true spiral of life. And that is what that shape is showing us. The set square is for drawing lines. The compass is for drawing circles. And the G is the shape at the heart of the spiral. It's the letter at the heart of the spiral. All
Oh,
spirals have a capital G at the heart of them. And so really, what we have here in this symbol is a map of the way to the basic shapes and an absolute balance of gender. And what it's about is the building in masonry is the building of awareness. It's the building of the internal ruler, the I, the one within. That's really what it's about. And when I was negatively polarized, when this came to me, because this didn't come to me all at once, this came to me over 20 years. I was working with points and lines for years back in 2010, and I knew nothing of. I hadn't even seen the link to the ruler, the one, and the chain of linguistic pattern that's there that actually knits something together in a really interesting way. And with the people that I've worked with these tools as, because you can feel them, there are parts of us that we can actually become aware of and feel. The first question to ask people about their line drawing energy, whether they're comfortable with it, is to ask somebody whether they're comfortable saying no to somebody.
mm.
Oh, and
One, isn't it? For a lot of people, that would be a big one.
so here's the thing, it is. And what I'm going to suggest to them all is it's not about the saying no. It's about the fact that you're drawing a line. And it's the feeling of drawing a line. And when we're energetically, that's you asserting your boundary. Now, when we are imbalanced and we've got a broken ruler, what happens is, because we're in a connection field all the time, we're all in the feminine until there's a point to be made, until there's a line to be drawn. We're all in the collective we until a change is needed. And that's when the masculine energy comes in. We charge for the change. I'm cold, and now I'm really cold. I'm going to put a jumper on. You wait until the charge comes up. I'm in a conversation, but I need the toilet. All right, I'm going to stick around. I don't want to be rude. And then, you absolutely burst it. It's like, right, no, I need to go now, and it's like, I need to go. I lost my thread there with those examples. Where was I? I've lost my thread completely. Mm.
Going on the
Oh,
shape.
yeah, the shape. And we're talking about the change and what it feels like. And when we don't have a good relationship with that energy in ourselves, and that's why little kids, by the way, that's why they like no so much. It's the one line they're allowed to draw. It's the one boundary they can assert because their own boundaries get overcome and overwhelmed. So, you know, their choices are overwhelmed so much the rest of the time. When they discover the power of no, it's such a beautiful thing to them because finally they can assert a boundary. But when we get used to the connection field with others and the we field, it can feel like if we say no, there's going to be some kind of absolute cutoff. And we don't like that feeling. We don't like the feeling of it. But it's like, no, we need to practice with that. Just little bits, little lines, little points. And bit by bit, you sort of assert your state. If we look at this shape here, and we said which was the shape of the feminine, if we said that really for a lot of people, if you haven't got a healthy ruler, this boundary of the cell of you, of your being, you know, it won't be well defined. And so in a way, it would be as if it's almost, and if you're not very good at saying no at all and don't have good boundaries, it would be like it's non-existent. So that's what you would want to be, but your state might be like that until you start to assert your I, your values. But what it means is if you've got no healthy boundary, it means that anything coming in cuts to the core. You know, it just feels like even the smallest no can feel like agony, or the smallest assertion of your values, if you're not used to it, can feel like agony. And it's not, it's just you wielding this charge of the masculine. It's just what it is. And I think we've all gone through a part of our life where we maybe didn't like our body or didn't like our emotions or didn't like our mind, but it's like you're stuck with them. It's the same with this. You're stuck with the ruler and compass. You're stuck with this flailing charge and this desire to be connected. And if we can wield them well, then we can manage healthy boundaries while remaining connected just with practice. And that's a beautiful thing. That's sovereignty with connection rather than what we see at the minute, the atomization, the truth movement sort of thing, where somebody says one thing that somebody disagrees with, and all of a sudden it's like, right, want nothing more to do with that person, you know, and not going to listen to anything else they said. And that's a sign of this really wonky ruler and compass relationship, because it's like, all right, I'm able to take the fact that I don't like that what they said, but I enjoyed this. And I don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater here because you know, who is perfect and who has every answer exactly right, sort of thing. You know, so learning to use these well, because it ends up sabotaging us. If we don't get skillful at it, we end up drawing absolute lines, right? Because we don't draw healthy boundaries as we go, we end up saying, right, having nothing more to do with that person. And it's, oh, well, they might have been a good friend for many years. Or, you know, maybe there was other riches available in that relationship, but that could have been part or dealt with or accepted if we could have asserted healthy boundaries in a way. So it's really valuable to get good at drawing points and making lines. And what happens is bit by bit, point by point, individual event by individual event, you will define your state and your values until you have one to inhabit. Now, what happens is we draw the line and we draw the line until we get to the stage where we're ready to cross the line. And if we cross the line, we get this shape here. Okay. And what's that shape? What do we call it?
Cross.
Cross. But what's another word for it?
Cross.
Yeah. And also, remember when we're talking with gender energy as well, we're talking about electromagnetism. In electricity, what's this?
And positive.
It's positive. It's what it really means to be positive. It's got nothing to do with a happy mood, right? To be positive has got nothing to do with a happy mood. It's about your ability to take charge of your values for change despite how you feel. It's about being able to stay on with your values, drawing the points and making the lines that assert your values, your standards, your state, the one that you want to take charge of and be ruler of, despite how you feel, and you achieve positive. But if you don't act on that energy, you will be cross. It's what happens. You can't help it. It's not behavioral. Any woman who has turned down a man for sexual interactions will know he may appear cross. And actually, it's thwarted charge. And when the charge in you that's come from life that seeks change wants to move, and we thwart it, we don't take charge of it, we don't assert the I and stand up for our values, we end up cross. And it's because it's stuck. And then we do things to suppress the charge. This is what alcohol and drugs are readily available for, to suppress our charge for change, because we don't believe in the value of the bits that we have to bring because of the broken ruler. The games consoles and all the rest of it, for the men hijacking that charge and that thrill of beating the baddie and all the rest of it. All the pornography is there to take the unskillful charge of men. I mean, we call the atmosphere at the football stadium electric, you know, and it's because it's taking that charge. It's a venting place for the unskillful charge, because the men don't know how to take charge in a way to be positive and end up being cross, basically. But the thing is, using these energies really do yield us what it is we're looking for, which is to be able to enjoy ourselves, to feel safe in ourselves, because actually we are the ones who have championed our values bit by bit. And it starts off uncomfortable. Wielding charge, the charge for change starts off uncomfortable. And often you'll see people doing it, will do it with anger, or they'll do it, you know, quite vehemently and passionately. It's because it's a difficult force to wield. It really is. And this is where before we were talking about needing the compassion for a beginner space when we're doing new things, because there's no way to get skillful at anything, like get our hands or our emotions or anything, without this healthy beginner space. So I invite everybody out there, if you want to take charge of your ruler and rebuild your values, then do it a bit at a time. Just be kind to yourself and know that it's you're wielding the lightning when you do it. But the reward that happens is your own, because you're standing up for your own values and for yourself. It's like your own quiet, sad part of self that wants change actually feels like you've listened to it because you've done something about it. Like you're starting to champion yourself. The Toltecs talk, I'm just looking at the time, a few more minutes. So the Toltecs talk about 4 natural enemies, and it's a beautiful distillation. And it worked. I mean, they really have nailed some things. And the 4 natural enemies affects everybody, regardless of your beliefs. And it's beautiful because they talk about there's a good and a bad to both of them, to all of them, and you face them at different stages in your life. And one of them is very, very relevant here when we're talking about healing the ruler and compass within. You know, healing our ruler for asserting ourselves, but also healing our compassion for ourselves and others. You know, that's the true feminine within us, is how to compass well. You know, sometimes our compass can guide us into desire, and that takes us back to that sort of, are we feeding our true nourishment, or are we feeding the parasite? Is me following this particular pool going to lead me to suffering or others to suffering, or is it taking me to where I definitely feel better, sort of thing? One more swig here. But anyway, the 4 enemies. So the first enemy, the first natural enemy, is called fear. Everybody's familiar with fear, and it has a healthy function in that it helps us to stay alive. But its negative function is, or its negative effect is when it stops us from doing the things we really want to do, but we might feel vulnerable or exposed in doing so. And so fear is a huge enemy in life for many of us. And so many of us might feel like we've maybe lived less than we could have done as a result of fear. And that's the point. It's a natural enemy that affects all of us.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the next enemy is clarity. And clarity can seem like a good thing, but it can also be deadly. And this is where it's important in the work of healing the ruler and compass to understand the enemy of clarity. So an example of clarity would be, becoming an enemy would be, you've got a friend or a loved one, and maybe they've been through a breakup or something bad's happened, and then they turn around and treat you really in a bad way. They really turn on you in a way that's quite unacceptable. But because you understand and you really feel affected by what they did, you know, really hit you. Your clarity might tell you that because you understand the situation that they're in and what's just happened, that you're going to accept it and you're not going to act on, your felt response. Clarity could be, and that's not necessarily a great example, but it's definitely, we'll look at some scaled up examples in a moment. But what that tells your own emotional self, your own feeling self, is that somebody else's feelings are more important than your own. And then when you look to have those resources show up for you within, you want that part of yourself to be available to your hopes and aspirations. It's not because you haven't championed it in different ways. And so this is a repairing of the relationship between the ruler and compass, which is we have to champion our true feelings. We have to champion our true experience. And the results of doing that are truly exquisite. But it has to be done. And sometimes, it's not pretty. Sometimes your mind might well disagree with how you feel because of the enemy of clarity. But it's interesting that they lead to the third natural enemy, which is power. And not using clarity to prevent our action stands in the way of our power. And this is, I think, what happens to a lot of people in the world when they're bombarded by so much news and information about formidable foes and seemingly huge powers. When we have a broken ruler, then we can think, and our clarity as to the enormity of what we're facing, it can make us just choose not to lift a hand. And it means that we don't grow into our power, which would be available if we didn't allow our own clarity to lead us to inaction. And then the fourth natural enemy is old age. And they say that old age gets us all in the end. But old age isn't just about the age of the body. When the Toltecs speak of it, old age can affect even a child. And when the Toltecs speak of old age, what they mean is that sense of tiredness, that you've done enough, that haven't I done enough? I'm tired. That sense of almost wanting to let yourself sink in a way or giving up in a way. All those sorts of energies can all be the enemy of old age. And they say that that one always wins in the end. But if you can be aware of it, trying to weigh you down with its stories of tiredness and its stories of sort of, you've done enough. It's like if you can banish that nonsense, then the other three will just cycle. Fear, power, clarity, fear, clarity, power. It's amazing how they relate to each other, but they really relate to this work of standing up for your feelings, standing up for your guidance system, standing up for your values so that you can then you create a state to indwell. And this is why I think this, just to wrap up, this Masonic symbol is the most significant, because where it can touch and where it can lead to, and I've only just introduced these ideas to you all tonight. You can all go and look at the different layers of it, look at the effect of these shapes in nature and watch how they help create the beauty of the experience that we're in, the dynamics of the line, the circle, and the spiral. Look for the energy of sort of boundary in your life and play with the energy of no and assertion and all the rest of it. Just go and fiddle around. If anyone's interested, there's plenty of other talks related to this that I've done online, and obviously I can come back.
Yes,
I
please.
don't know if you have any thoughts or questions, but that's hopefully now everyone can see. But that symbol is, I think, is now, when it was negatively polarized, I thought this secret society were hiding the power of the basic shapes and gender from us. And then when I explored Masonry and realized nobody knew this, nobody has this relationship that I've shared with you tonight. And the journey, this isn't in the Masonic bodies of knowledge as far as I'm aware at all. I found these in the mental patterns in the substance of mind itself, which is why we can all see it. It's there to be found for all of us. The ruler and compass are tools for building awareness. It's for everyone. So now the way I view it, now I'm more positively polarized. To me, it's like the original and old Masons knew that we would forget, knew that we would end up disconnected and disembodied with the way that we used shapes and how they can touch us deeply. And so they left this map, this pathway encoded in this symbol, that it can be decoded to find the basic shapes, the line, the circle, and the spiral from that symbol, which I think is actually quite a beautiful thing.
Oh. And subconsciously, when we see that symbol, what is it doing for us? We're just
Nothing
acknowledging.
with anything, it's just there, but it's on all their buildings. And I do think it's a truly exquisite thing, you know. Now I do anyway.
Amazing what you've looked into there. I mean, just really, I love the whole story, how you've brought it round to that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's just
what it
patterns. It's
must be
patterns.
like to live in your mind, Darren.
Traumatizing.
Seriously, though, I mean, we just take it all so for granted, don't we? I'll just say two things about limited boundaries. Someone
Yes.
said to me the other day, and you do need boundaries. I really do think you do on some circumstances. But then someone else said, oh, if you're putting boundaries in, you're limiting yourself. You're not open to what might come because you're thinking you've got to put boundaries in for yourself.
That's the imbalance. That's the imbalance with income is that's believing that it's one or the other. And it's not. You can have both. That's what the spiral is. It's like, no, I can have boundaries and still be open. Look at the spiral. It's fundamentally open. It's open to the unknown. It's open to the outside. It's an open shape. So the
Right.
spiral is perfect. I
You
mean,
can
one
move.
thing I didn't look at, which I love, is if we just to finish on, if we bisect the spiral of life, you know, the Fibonacci spiral, we call it something. We call it phi. We call it the phi ratio. And the shape for phi is this. It's the perfect penetration of the line and circle. And I think that's beautiful because that's from a different alphabet altogether. That's from the Greek alphabet, but it's about these patterns are in us. And so we're just using them in these places, perhaps without even realizing, but it's like these are the patterns of life and of nature. And as we start to work more with them, the riches are really, really, really quite exquisite.
The other thing I just wanted to mention as well is when you said when a child gets to know he can say no. I know with parents, I know we've had a talk, I can't remember who it was now. Oh, I think it was Jessica Alstrom in America. And she said, I say yes to everything because we shut the child down. So that's the adult, not the child. So if the adult says, no, you can't do that. No, you can't have that. No, you. So she says yes to life, but then she questions. So her son, for instance, said he wanted something and it would have been very expensive. And she said, yes, you can have that. How will we work to get that, to be able to afford that for you? And made him work it out for himself. So she didn't say no because she couldn't afford it, but she said, yes, we can do that. Let's work out how we can do it. So saying yes to life.
Well, I'm going to give you a little spell to finish on. Is that all right?
Right.
Okay. So there are two no's. So we have two eyes, like a hand for each and a leg for each, but there are two no's. So it's like we've got two eyes. We've got the eye that wants chocolate and the eye that doesn't. The eye that wants change and the eye that doesn't. The eye that wants a tidy house and the eye that can't be bothered. Well, that might just be me. But you know, we have this, we're like we're in this competing, we're in the realm of the competing two eyes. But we have two no's to go with those two eyes. And they are these. Can you see that? So imagine a child is going to the fire. You can say, no, hot. Or you can say, no, hot. Doesn't allow the child to experience the fire, does allow the child to experience the fire. You can talk about a knife, a sharp knife, and say, no, sharp. Or you can say, no, sharp. Now, all of us use these two. This is experience. This is not experience. So there are things that you know you should say no to. And there are things that you say no to that are preventing your knowing. And this is the sort of boundary play that we're involved in ourselves, balancing off the I that wants to say no and the I that wants to know. And really the only way to go about it is to follow what is coming from within, the embodied feeling that comes with it. That's the real guidance system, you know.
So grateful, Darren.
Pleasure.
Love talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, anyone that's watching.
And listen, hope that was useful.
Oh, see you again soon, hopefully then.
Nice to see you. Cheers.
Thank you.